Jesus is here. Come on. And he's right there with you no matter what your years look like, no matter what your week has been like. And I know for all of us, this past year has been incredibly difficult. Come on. How many of y'all would agree? I think for some of us, it's been harder than others. But I think oftentimes when we're going through those dark seasons, those times, you know, the dark nights of the soul, those seasons of life, I think it's easy to forget that Jesus is actually there in the midst of us, in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our struggle. He's there. He's promised to never leave us or forsake us. So, beloved, I want to give you hope today that Jesus is there. Whatever you're going through, he has always been there. It's just about you awakening to that reality. You know, Jesus promised us that we would have trouble. I know that's not a promise that you want to put on your refrigerator or a plaque that you buy at Hobby Lobby. You know, in this world you will have trouble. But Jesus actually told us this. He said, in this world you will have trouble. But take heart. But take heart. Be courageous. Take courage because I've overcome the world. Jesus didn't just overcome the grave. Come on, he overcame the troubles of this world, and we can find hope in him. If you came to me and you said, Pastor, how would you describe the past year in one word? What's one word that you could identify? And I think we might all have a different word that we would identify this past year as. And if you asked me, you said, and I was thinking about this just this week, one word that would sum up the last year, I would come up with this word, lifeless. It's lifeless. Lifeless. We felt confined and constrained. For many, life has ceased, not just literally, but we've just kind of been going through the motions, riding the wave of a virus and the political climate and the race issues and all that. We've just been kind of getting by. We've just been kind of going, but it seems like thriving has stopped. It seems like living has stopped for many. We're just on the hamster wheel, going through the motions, lifeless. But see, what I love about the resurrection is that it's always relevant. The resurrection is always relevant because resurrection brings life to the lifeless. Come on, it brings hope to the hopeless. Come on, it brings healing to the sick. Come on. It brings joy to the depressed. We have life because Jesus overcame the world. And there's many people that are skeptical of the resurrection. And we'll talk a little bit about even some of those people here in just a moment. But many would call themselves Christians, maybe because they were raised in America or they were raised in church. But listen, Christianity, the reality of Christianity hinges on the fact that Jesus has risen from the dead, that he is resurrected, that he is living, that there is an eternal physical man in heaven ruling from his throne that defeated death. This is what Christianity hinges upon, the reality of the resurrection. Listen, if the resurrection isn't true, we should all go home because Christianity's false. But I'm here to tell you that according to history, according to reason, according to logic, according to eyewitness testimony, according to the testimony of the people in this room, Jesus is alive. Jesus is active. Jesus is doing stuff today. And some of you experienced some of that this morning. And I'm here to tell you today that he wants to bring life to whatever is lifeless in you. Jesus resurrects the lifeless. You know, there's this story that we all know, most of us know, about this man named Lazarus who died. And Jesus decides to interrupt his funeral. Come on. Don't invite Jesus to funerals. So Jesus shows up, and he's been dead for 3 days. And Jesus calls him forth, the famous story. Lazarus come forth. He comes out, get off his grave clothes. And he makes this statement. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. He doesn't just say, I resurrect dead bodies. He doesn't even say today, I've been resurrected. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. And anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. See, there is resurrection in Christ. If you have Christ in you, you have resurrection power. And he brings life to your bones. He brings hope to your desperate soul. Jesus is the resurrection. And there are many conflicted human experiences that people are facing today. And there were many that people were experiencing 2,000 years ago when Jesus was risen from the dead. And some people would say, man, if I was there, if I was just there, if I could have just been alive in the time of Jesus, I would believe I would have this thriving life. But I'm here to tell you today, they were experiencing some of the same things that you're experiencing today. And it took an encounter with the resurrected Christ to overcome those things, to overcome the power of the world. Let's look at it. John chapter 20. It says this early on Sunday morning. How many of y'all were up early this morning? Anybody else up before the sun was? Come on, how many of y'all do that on a regular occasion? You're up early when it's still dark. So this is the scene on Resurrection Sunday over 2,000 years ago. And there's this woman named Mary Magdalene who Jesus delivered from 7 demons. I mean, she was full of demons. You think you got demons? She had 7 of them. That's a lot. Why 7? I don't know that there's anything spiritual about it being 7. There probably is. I'm sure somebody has an answer for that. But I'm here to tell you that's a lot of demons. Come on. I mean, 1's too many. And she had 7. So no wonder she showed up to the grave that day. So early on Sunday morning while it was still dark. Come on, I love it that there is light in darkness. While it was still dark, Mary came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away at the entrance. Other words, the stone that took 2 powerful soldiers to close and seal was now open, and the soldiers are gone. And some have suggested that Jesus woke up. He wasn't actually dead, but he had the strength in his body to roll the stone away, overpower two soldiers, and he was never really dead to begin with. That doesn't make any sense. So she ran. So she saw the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. So she ran and found Simon Peter. Everybody say Peter. There's Peter. And the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loves. Now that's John talking about himself in the Bible. When in his gospel he says the disciple that Jesus loved. That's okay for you to walk around going, hey, I'm the one that Jesus loves. Come on, that's good news for you. You could just, when someone say, who are you? You say, I'm the one that Jesus loves. I'm the beloved one. Come on, that's a good word for some of you because you don't realize that you're loved of Jesus. John was very confident. She said, they have taken. So she goes up to Peter and John. She says, they've taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they put him. What did you do with Jesus? I mean, they lost Jesus. Somebody stole Jesus. We don't know. She's freaking out. She goes to do some things to his dead body, prepare his body even further. She'd already done some of that. And here she is. And she tells us to Peter, goes and gets him. And Peter and John run towards the tomb. Now, they were believing, but they were kind of hesitant. So they start running. John outruns Peter and gets to the grave first. They walk in, and they see the grave is empty. And it says this, that until that time, they hadn't understood the Scripture. I mean, they had spent 3 years with Scripture in flesh, and they didn't understand the Scripture. Come on. Come on, it don't matter how much time you got invested. Sometimes you just need a revelation of what's already there. So they didn't understand the Scripture. But when they saw that the grave was empty, it says they went home. They were like, oh yeah, of course. Now we understand. So they run off, and Mary's there. Verse 11. Standing outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. And 2 white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been laying. Dear woman, why are you crying? The angel asked her. Because they have taken away my Lord, she replied, and I don't know where they've put him. She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. Just like that video we just watched. Jesus was there, but he wasn't recognized. Jesus wasn't hiding, but he was hidden. And so Jesus is there, and he says, "Dear woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. Sir, have you ever mistaken the gardener for Jesus? No, neither have I. But I know that a lot of times Jesus came in a way that I didn't recognize. So she thinks he's the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you've taken him away, tell me where you put him, and I'll go get him." "Mary," Jesus said. "Mary." She turned and cried, "Rabboni, Rabboni, Rabbi, teacher, it's you. You were here. I didn't realize it, but you were here all along. It's you." I want to talk this morning about 4 resurrection encounters. And the first one is Mary. What do we have? These are similar stories that we experience. Come on, human experiences that need a resurrection encounter. The first one is Mary, grieving. Mary grieving. This human experience of grief. What is grief? Grief is a sorrow from suffering loss. And here she is, suffering loss. Jesus, who she owes a life of gratitude to her because of the deliverance that he had provided for her. Any of you experienced grief in the past year? Maybe you've lost a loved one. Maybe you've lost a job. That's all grief is. Grief is just sorrow from suffering loss. And most of us, what we do with our grief is we think, I need to get over it. I need to be done with my grief, because we treat grief like weakness. But grief isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of caring. If you didn't grieve when you lost something, then that means that what you lost wasn't important to you. And so what we do is we treat people like there's something wrong with them when they're grieving. There's nothing wrong with you. It's part of the human experience. Grief. Some of you are grieving right now. I was grieving big time a year ago. Had to shut down a church. What was I doing? I was suffering loss. I lost time, which for me is like the worst thing I could possibly lose. We lost momentum as a church. I feel like we're recapturing that today. Come on. We lost relationships. We lost hope. We lost people. We lost people in our church. People left the church. No conversation there. I'm grieving. Don't even know why. Just wondering, man, I hope they're doing okay. I hope they didn't fall off the deep end. But I had to come to grips with the fact. I was sitting in a meeting, and I heard a Christian psychologist say this. He said, you've got to give yourself permission to grieve. And up until that point, I wouldn't give myself permission to grieve. And he said, listen, it could be $10 that you lost. Grief is normal. And so I was sitting there, I was like, what is wrong with me? Because I wasn't depressed. Grief can lead to depression, but I wasn't depressed. I was just, what is it? I was able to identify that it was grief. And realize that, listen, grief is not just something that I have to get through. Grief is a process, and it's normal. So it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of caring. And so what I love about Jesus, when he shows up, all he has to do to help Mary process the grief and to switch her perspective on the grief is say her name. I'm telling you, all Jesus has to do in your grief is say your name. He's not hiding, but he might be hidden from you. And so I would encourage you to turn around, open your eyes and talk, because we know this. Isaiah 53:4, surely he has bore our griefs and carried our sorrows. I love it that Jesus, some translations say this, that he was a man of sorrows, acquainted with our grief. He knows what it is to lose someone. Jesus never lost. He's the ultimate victory, but he loses people. He loses people because he gives them the opportunity to not respond. I remember years ago, I was going through a deep, dark time in my life. And I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm just so lonely. I feel so rejected. And Jesus is as tangible as I could ever tell you that he has appeared to me, shows up in my living room and sits on the edge of my couch and says, Josh, I understand. People reject me every day. Probably the most real encounter I've ever had with the Lord. What is he saying? He's saying my name. He's saying, I'm here. I'm with you in the midst of your grief. So we see Mary grieving. We see the disciples fearing. Fear, man, has not fear taken over our nation over the last year with all the drama that's happening? Has fear not taken over? So many people are so motivated by fear. Some people will call their fear wisdom. Listen, if it's not the fear of the Lord, it's not wisdom. Come on. And so fear has taken over, and it says this in John chapter 20, verse 19. It says, that Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Why were they afraid of the Jewish leaders? Because they were afraid, being followers of Jesus, they were going to do to them the same thing that they did to Jesus. And eventually they did. Then suddenly, Jesus just appears. Love it. Has that ever happened to you? It's like you're just going about your day, doing your business, and then you're like, whoa, Jehovah's sneaky, right? Jesus just shows up. What the heck? I didn't even know you were here, Lord. Suddenly I can see. The reality is he's always there, but sometimes he's just making himself known. And this is what he says, peace with you. Good thing he said that, right? I mean, if Jesus just appears physically in my room, I'm probably going to need some peace. Because they were probably more afraid of that than the Jewish leaders. And as he spoke, he showed them the wounds in his hands and his side. And they were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. See, I love it that Jesus can bring joy even in the midst of our fear. Jesus brings peace in the midst of our fear. Again, he says, peace be with you. Again, he says it. And he says, as the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. Other words, you've got stuff to do, but you're not going to be able to do it behind closed doors with the door locked because of your fear. You've got to go out and get on mission. So I give you my peace. It's not the peace that the world offers. It's the peace that the Comforter offers. It's the peace that the Holy Ghost offers. And so this is what he says, peace with you. As the Father has sent me, so I'm sending you. Then he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Ghost. Some of you need that breath in your life. You've been operating in a spirit of fear, but God didn't give you a spirit of fear. He gave you a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. He gave you the Holy Ghost. Some of you are pursuing comfort because you're afraid, but he doesn't want you pursuing comfort. He wants you pursuing the Comforter. That way you can go through the difficulties of life. And Jesus promises us peace when we tend to be afraid, and joy in the midst of it. So we see Mary grieving, the disciples fearing, and then we see Thomas doubting. You've heard it. Don't be a doubting Thomas. Have you ever said that? I've said it before. You know, one of the things that we're dealing with right now with a lot of quote-unquote Christians is we're dealing with a lot of doubt. People are doubting God because times are difficult. What better time to believe in God? Because Jesus promised us we would face trouble. Yet studies are coming out right now. Just saw it on the news this week that church membership is down 50% over the last year. In 1 year, cut in half. I've seen it. I've talked to pastors. We watched our volunteer base get crumbled. Why? Because some of it is fear, but some of it is just doubt. People are doubting God. They're doubting God's purpose on their life. And then we have this epidemic that's way bigger than the epidemic of a coronavirus. We have this epidemic called deconstruction, where people are saying, well, I'm not, for these reasons, because of these people, which is usually involves people. It's interesting how we will discredit God for something a person does. They'll say, because the church hasn't treated me well, or because I've had a difficult time in life, therefore God does not exist. Now let me suggest this to you. Deconstruction, where people abandon the faith, is not anything new. You need to wrestle with your faith. Absolutely, you need to wrestle with your faith, but you need to wrestle to win. Come on. And this is the reality. If you want a way out, you'll find it. And if you want a way in, you'll find it. The way is there. Both doors are open. So deconstruction is nothing new. It's just now it's public. Now people want to be famous because they stopped following Jesus. John chapter 20. Here's Thomas. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, was not with the other disciples. And it's important. He was not with the other disciples when Jesus came, which tells me I want to make sure that I show up when he's going to show up. Listen, one of these Sundays, you're just going to want to sleep in, and that's going to be your day. One of these days at group is going to be your day. You better show up, because he's showing up. Are you showing up? So he didn't show up. Thomas was not there when the others came, and they told him, we have seen the Lord, but he replied, I don't believe. And can I tell you today, I would be Thomas. That would be me. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's great. But until I won't believe unless I see the nail wounds in his hands and put my finger in them and place my hand into his side. 8 days later. 8 days later. I mean, that's a long time to live in doubt. Have you ever got a text message? You send a text message and you're waiting for the response for like 5 minutes and you're like, 8 days. And this is way bigger than the text that you or I are waiting on. 8 days later, the disciples were together again. But this time, Thomas was with them. And the doors were locked, just like last time. But suddenly, Jehovah Sneaky, there he is. But suddenly, again, as before, Jesus is standing among them. Peace be with you. Don't freak out. He said to them. And then he said to Thomas, let me tell you what he didn't say. He didn't say, I can't believe you, Thomas. Why didn't you believe the other disciples? That's not what he said. He said, Thomas, put your finger here. Put your finger here and look at my hands, and put your hand in the wound in my sides. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe. Don't be faithless any longer. What does God want to do with your doubt? Does he want to exile you because of your doubt? No, he wants to reveal himself to you. He wants to encounter you. So Thomas says, my Lord and my God. And we've given Thomas this terrible name and reputation of being a doubter. But he wasn't a doubter. Listen, doubt is only detrimental if you're looking for a way out. Doubt is only final if you're looking for a way out. But Thomas no longer doubted. After this moment, Thomas transformed the world. Thomas is speared through, not horizontally, but vertically. Speared through his body because of his faith, not because of his doubt. Thomas in India, southern India, over 3,000 miles away, speared through for his faith in Jesus. And we dare call him a doubter, where he planted 7 churches. Some historians believed that Thomas went as far as China to take the gospel. He led revival. That's no doubter. Why did he lead revival? Because he said, it's not good enough that I have the testimony from you. I need to experience Jesus for myself. Beloved, that is the kind of faith that God wants. Will you pursue him? So what do you do in doubt? In your doubt, seek him out. In your doubt, seek him out. Don't turn and run away. He wants to be found. In your doubt, seek him out. Listen, I know you have doubts. I have doubts. I've been doing this thing for almost 30 years. I still have doubts. But in my doubt, I come to him. What I love about Thomas is he didn't hear the testimony and say, I don't believe, and then never show back up. No. The next time the disciples were there, he showed up. He showed up. Beloved, hang in there. Wrestle with your doubts. Wrestle with your faith. Reconcile those things. Study to show yourself approved. I'm telling you, the truth is on your side. The truth is on your side. The facts are on your side. When in doubt, seek him out. Ask the Lord, reveal yourself to me. Lord, I want to put my hand in your hands. Lord, I want to see you outside of the tomb. Lord, I want to see you in the upper room. Lord, I want to see you. So we see that Mary was grieving. The disciples were fearing. Thomas was doubting. And Peter, here we go. We love Peter. Peter is filled with shame. So we know Peter. I mean, Peter just got off the world tour with Jesus. You know, maybe not the whole world, but the whole Israel tour with Jesus. I mean, you could pay all this money and go on an Israel tour, and it will be awesome. But it won't be as good as the tour that Peter was on. I mean, he was there. He had the word in flesh right there, the spoken word, the living word, the written word, all of it right there in flesh with him. And Peter is pumped because Jesus just tells him, hey, your name's not going to be Simon anymore. Your name's going to be Peter. I'm going to build my church on your revelation. You're the guy, Peter. I want you to lead my church. Not the little C church, the big C church. You're the guy, Peter. I'm leaving and you're in charge. Here are the keys. Remember? He told him that. We talked about that last week. So Peter's like, come on, let's do this. And so they're at Passover meal. You know the story. They're at Passover meal. Jesus just days before his death, just hours before his death. And Jesus says, whoever dips their bread in here is going to betray me. And Peter looks at Jesus and says, Lord, I would never betray you. I mean, we've been like on tour together. I would never betray you. And then Jesus looks at Peter and says, you know what? Before the rooster crows 3 times, you're going to deny me. Oh, Lord, I don't think so. So Jesus, they leave, they go and they pray. Peter's there. Jesus picks 3 guys to go pray with him, or maybe they pick Jesus. We don't know. But they're praying. Peter's one of the guys. And Jesus is praying. I'm praying that your faith won't fail. I'm praying that your spirit will be strong, that you will not be weak in this moment. I'm praying that you'll have the faith to withstand. But Jesus knew what Peter was going to do. So they come, they arrest Jesus. Peter throws a fit, does cut a dude's ear off. Jesus sticks it back on. They arrest Jesus. Jesus is publicly tried, beaten, mocked. And it says Peter, it says this in Luke 22, verse 54, that Peter followed at a distance. Peter followed at a distance. I wonder if the reason why Peter denied Jesus is because he followed at a distance. Are you following at a distance? The distance always comes before the denial. The distance always comes before the denial. Beloved, don't follow at a distance. So he's observing, and he's in the courtyard, and there's Jesus right there, literally being murdered before his eyes. being whipped and being ridiculed and mocked before the actual crucifixion on the cross, but the whole process leading up. Peter's there, and a woman comes up to him. She says, hey, aren't you wanted Jesus? No, I don't even know the man. Peter. Another woman says, hey, you're one of his guys. You're one of his followers. I don't know the man. How dare you? Another person comes to Peter, a third person. Peter. Hey, aren't you Peter? Are you one of Jesus' guy? Your accent, you talk like the Galilean people. You have an accent. It sounds like you've been around Jesus. You've been running with these guys. Aren't you one of them? And it says that he cursed them and he cursed himself. I do not know the man. And as soon as he says that, he hears the alarm of the rooster crow. Verse 61 of Luke 22, it says, at that moment, this is intense. At that moment, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Can you imagine that moment, the thing that you said you would never do, and the Lord looks over at you? Suddenly, the Lord's words flashed through Peter's mind. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny me 3 times, that you even know me. And Peter left the courtyard weeping bitterly. Weeping bitterly. Why was Peter weeping bitterly? Because Peter was filled with shame. Because Peter was filled with regret. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it must have felt like to be Peter in that moment? You say, no, I would never do that. Peter said the same thing, and here he is. Have you ever blown it? Have you ever just screwed up so bad? I bet I have a bunch of times. Have you ever felt like you've made such a big mistake that there's no way you'll ever recover? Am I the only one? Have you feel like that you've gone too far, that you've broken it beyond repair, that you've passed the point of no return? Do you feel helpless? Do you live with the sting of regret? This is Peter. Shame, beloved. Shame will control your life. Shame, listen, it's easy for us many times to think that we're forgiven before the Lord. Lord, I'm forgiven. I thank you that you're so gracious and you forgive us. And he forgives us. But the problem is we have a hard time getting over our sin. It's called shame. And I have watched more people in my life personally. I've known more people that have been destroyed from shame than I have even destroyed from sin. Because sin's sting is shame. And it's like they would get right with God, but they feel so unfit. They feel so unworthy. Or they've confessed the sin so many times. Have you done it? Man, I remember my whole life until I was 18 years old. I remember praying every single night, Lord, forgive me. Because there was a shame that was over my life. And I just knew that I was unfit for what God wanted. And it controlled me. And so what did I do the next day instead of living righteously? You know what I did? I lived in sin again because I could not believe the goodness of God. And so Peter, we're not seeing a whole lot of dialogue between him and Jesus. I mean, usually they're like chatting it up, right? It's usually Peter and Jesus and a couple other guys, but Peter's always talking. We don't see Peter talking a lot. We see him run to the grave, inspect the grave. I'm sure that was driven by shame. But we don't see Jesus have a lot of conversations with Peter. And so Peter does something that people filled with shame do. Peter goes back to fishing. Not that fishing's a shameful occupation, but because fishing is not the same as carrying the keys of the kingdom. It was not his assignment. So Peter's fishing. Why? Because he doesn't feel fit for what Jesus called him to do. So Jesus comes out. I love it. Peter was shamed. Jesus is seeking Peter out. He goes to find him. Let me suggest this to you today. The enemy will always try to disqualify us because of our mistakes. That's what shame does. Shame tells me I could never do that because I did this. Shame says I could never do that because I did this. Beloved, that is shame. If you are in Christ, you're a new creation. The old is gone. All things are made new. Brand new. Clean slate. You know what? You know what you have when you come to God? You have the righteous, not because you've been good, but because of what Jesus did, because Jesus is good. You know what you're clothed with? Not your deeds, not your past, not your littered bad decisions. No. You are clothed with the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. God looks at you and he goes, they're a holy one. He's redeemed you. Do not allow the enemy to disqualify you because of something that you did in your life. You are qualified because of the goodness of Jesus. So Jesus shows up, sees Peter out in the boat, and John's there. And John says, hey, it's the Lord. He came out. So Peter he's kind of taking his clothes off because he's fishing, so he puts his clothes back on and jumps in the water and works his way to the shore. And they're catching fish, all this kind of crazy stuff. They show up and Jesus is like, let's eat. So they have all this fish and they're cooking, they're eating breakfast, and they're there. And we don't see the dialogue. I don't know if any's happening, but I do know that what Jesus says to Peter right now is critical. Jesus asked Simon Peter, John 21:15, Simon. And it's interesting that he's calling him Simon, because he had just called him Peter. He just changed his name. Now he's calling him Simon. I believe he's calling him Simon because he started living like Simon again. He started identifying as Simon when he was actually Peter. So Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord. Peter replies, you know I love you. Then feed my lambs. There's a whole lot of theology. I'm not going to get into this right now. Peter, you're supposed to be loving people. You're supposed to be a fisher of men. Do you love me? Yeah. Then do what I designed you to do. Verse 16, Jesus repeated the question. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord. You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep. Jesus said. A third time he asks him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus replies, feed my sheep. What's up, Jesus? Why are you doing this so many times? What are you getting at? Are you getting at that Peter doesn't love you? No, Peter does love Jesus. But if you remember, Peter just rejected Jesus 3 times. So by Jesus, in this moment, he is not rebuking Peter. He is restoring Peter. He says, listen, I will give you 3 opportunities to affirm my love and to affirm my purpose in your life. I am going to give you the opportunity, Peter, to make up for lost time. I'm going to give you the opportunity to not deny me, but to acknowledge me and to recognize that my plans are good and my purposes do not fail and I do not change and my mandate is on your life and you can't screw it up. Beloved, you can't screw up the plans of God. And some of you have been living the same way for 15, 20 years because you think you've screwed up too much that you've gone beyond repair. But I'm telling you, if this old fisher boy named Peter could come in and he could deny Jesus publicly 3 times and Jesus could restore him to lead the greatest revival that the world has ever seen, then I can tell you today that he can restore you, that he can rebuild your life. Jesus defeats shame. See, this moment is Peter's resurrection. Peter's resurrection. Some of you need a resurrection. Will you stand with me all across this room? Just close your eyes. I want to ask you these questions today, because I think you're here on purpose. I think the word today was for you, some point of it. And I just want you to search your heart right now, and I want to ask you these questions. And I want you to just take in light of all that you've been experiencing, maybe the last year, maybe the last 10 years, maybe just the last 2 days. That's for somebody, something that you experienced the last 2 days. And I just want you to search your heart as you ponder these questions. Are you grieving? Are you grieving? Is your heart suffering loss? Your heart is hurting. If you're grieving, the Lord is calling. He's calling your name. Are you afraid? I would never ridicule your fear, but I would encourage you that the peace of God, the joy of the Lord is available to you. The Lord wants to break off the fear in your life because it's hindering you from doing what He's designed for you to do. It's hindering your life. Are you in doubt? Maybe you're not doubting God, but maybe you're doubting His goodness. He wants to reveal Himself to you. Are you in shame? Has regret plagued your mind? Are you obsessed with your mistakes? Are they controlling you? Are they holding you down? Are they limiting you? Do you think I could never because I did this? Second guessing. Today I want to give you the opportunity to sign back up. And people are already coming up to the front. If you want to jump up here, you just go ahead and go. The light is green. You go ahead and come on up. You second guessing? You feel disqualified? That's a shame talking. Come on, today's the day. Some of you are not living for God right now in this moment because of shame. It's not because you don't want to live for the Lord. It's just you just don't think you can because you keep screwing up. The enemy's got you right where he wants you. Don't play into the devil's hand.